Welcome back to Empowered and Out, the podcast that helps LGBTQ plus professionals reclaim their purpose, rebuild their confidence, and thrive in careers where they don't have to mask who they are. Today, I'm joined by Scott Kratchmer, founder of Scott Kratchmer Coaching, and an advocate for older queer men finding their unapologetic voice in life and work. Scott knows firsthand what it's like to navigate blue-collar spaces while hiding who you are. And he's made it his mission to help others break free from masking, people-pleasing, and self-editing. From the silent gap in the trades to the grief of coming out later in life, Scott's work is about creating visibility, safety, and empowerment for queer men, whether they're out, closeted, or somewhere in between. And trust me, his story is going to resonate in ways you might not expect. Whether you're job searching, aiming for leadership, or just want a career where you can be yourself, this podcast is for you. So if you're a longtime listener to Empowered and Out, or you tuning in for the first time, I am so glad that you're here. And Scott, welcome to Empowered and Out. I am so glad that you are here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Jonathan. I'm really happy to be here as well.
All right. Well, so Scott, you talked about coming out more than once. And I know that I've even brought this up numerous times, even on this podcast, because it happens more than once.
Mhm.
You've also talked about, possibly even going back into the closet. Can you share what that looked like for you and why it's more common than people think?
Absolutely. So I'll start with why it's more common than people think. So because uh, it's a process, and essentially the first person that you have to come out to is yourself,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you've been living with, in that internalized shame, internalized homophobia. That's the first person you're going to come out to. And then it might be, for some folks, it might be a couple of close friends. And depending on what your family situation is like, it might be your family. You might come out at school. You might come out in your workplace. And then really, it's a lifelong process because if you switch to a new job, you are going to be meeting new people. If you move to a new state, province, country, you're going to be meeting new people. Anytime you meet somebody new, you're going to be navigating well, am I going to come out to this person or these people? And so really, it's not a one and done like people may think. I wish it was because it would be a heck of a lot easier, such as it is. So my story, I'm going to preface this with sort of the where I grew up. So I'm in Canada right now. I'm in Newfoundland, Canada, but I grew up in rural Saskatchewan and a small town. Gender norms were very, very rigid. So masculine, feminine, that's it. If you don't fall into either one of those, you are treated differently. And I also grew up in a religious family too. So very religious. Mentioning the word gay in my town, it was even strange to just mention the word. It was just, we didn't talk about it, but I was certainly third. I didn't present the masculine traits like everyone else did. I was even told once by one of my schoolmates as a teenager, if you want to be treated as normal, you need to walk differently, you need to talk differently, you need to change everything about yourself. And so I stayed, like, I always knew there was something different about me, but that shame and that sort of homophobic environment made its way inside me, and I internalized it all as I was growing up. And then so it was like, no, I'm not that. The thoughts were there. I knew it was different, but no, I'm not that. And that continued that way of thinking continued until I was 25 years.
Hmm.
That was the year I went to university for the first time. I went to college previously and I studied something else, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. But for all intents and purposes, at 25 years old is when I finally said to myself, okay, I'm gay. Yes, I'm gay. But the shame factor was still there. And so was that internalized homophobia. So I said, but I'm not going to act on it. I'm going to and I'll stay hidden forever. That's it. The other fear I had was that I would be completely disowned from my family, especially my parents. That was huge on me. So I entered university, and the first couple of years were great because now I was in an environment these expectations weren't there. Like there wasn't anybody telling me or treating me like I was different. It was
Mhm.
suddenly it was very different. And I didn't feel an expectation to perform or anything like that. So I concentrated on my studies and I really liked what I was doing. I fell in love with history and it was I had decided that I wanted to go the academic route and go full on PhD, become a prof and teach. And then after my second year, I got a summer job at a golf course. This was in Alberta, Calgary, Alberta.
Mhm.
And I was on the grounds maintenance crew. So this is like a blue collar environment. So it was male dominated and very, all that toxic type masculine stuff that you can imagine. It was all there. And almost from the very beginning, people noticed I was different. And right away, I started getting the comments. Well, you must be gay. Well, you're one of them flaming homos.
Wow.
And yeah, and this was on the daily, and right away in my brain it triggered the shame, it triggered the internalized homophobia, and of course it put me back into denial a little bit. No, I'm not. I even have somebody who I befriended participated in these comments at first, and
Mm.
then after a while he stopped because he saw how it was bothering me. But I tried to edit myself as much as I could. But when I'd get placed in, like, I'd get assigned certain activities such as cleaning the bathrooms or working in the flower beds, which actually I loved, but they saw that as a female role, and so they would say things like, "Time to put your skirt on," and
Wow.
yeah, it
Interesting.
was it was awful. And so I spent 3 summers like that because I didn't want to quit because I felt like I was being a coward and running away. But on the other side of it, it was really impacting my mental health. I fell into a real depression because of it. The other thing I tried to do was I would go out with these people to try to prove, and I would do the drinking and I would do because if you're drinking, you're getting drunk, you're being sort of rebellious. That was associated with that masculine stuff too. So I was doing it all, and I was still getting the comments. And then finally in my last year, the fellow that I told you, he I befriended him. He was initially participating in the comments but then stopped. Well, we eventually became roommates in my last year. I lived with him and his girlfriend, and he kind of saw I was tired of how I was feeling, but I was also that I didn't want to behave, and I wasn't me. I was lashing out at people, including him and his girlfriend. And finally, I was just tired of it, and I said, "Okay, you guys, I have to tell you something." I didn't tell them together. I told them separately, but that's when I decided to come out to them. And to their credit, they were very understanding. They never outed me to anybody else. They kept that secret. And it was a bit of a relief uh to just
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
let that out. And I felt so much better after that, confiding in two people that I called my friends. So being at my final year, I had planned on traveling overseas for a year to teach English because I'd always dreamed about traveling, and this was my way of doing it. Make some money, experience a different culture, and I'd always loved the idea of traveling, and my sense of adventure was always a thing with me. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't running away. I've had to be honest with myself about that. Not That wasn't completely the only reason, but that was a factor.
Mhm.
Going to a country where I could disappear and be anonymous with millions of people, because I was living in a city, Seoul, South Korea, literally millions of people. And that's exactly what it was. I went there and it was amazing. I didn't have to edit or hide myself. People were more about the novelty of, oh, there's this guy from Canada. Cool. Let's learn what we can. And they just wanted to learn English, whatever chance they got. And as far as other English teachers that were there, I mean, it wasn't an issue either. There were never any of these expectations that I experienced elsewhere. So I stayed quiet and I didn't, I just, again, I was in that place where whatever happens, happens. I'm okay. I'm gay. I'm not gonna push forward on it and nothing. I'm just gonna live my life and enjoy this. Well, I ended up meeting somebody, a guy, and like I had experimented before, but this fella and I, we got together, and this was my first real experience. And he was older than me, the gentleman, and he and I think this is common for for folks who, they have their first experience and they fall for the guy, and that's exactly
Mhm.
what happened to me. Romantically, I fell for him. He did not return the feelings. It was completely physical for him, but it broke my heart. Like it was like, but it's not supposed to be this way. It's, I fought this
Yeah.
hard to just get here, and it's not supposed to be like this. But it was, and I had nobody to talk to about this experience, and I didn't even want to talk to the two friends who I came out to. I didn't even want to tell them. So,
Well, I'm not
so
sure they would have been just I don't know if they'd really been able to relate because it's a different experience as a gay male having that type of experience compared to straight, cis men and women. It's not the same.
100%. And that was exactly my thoughts. Like, they're not going to get this. And so I stayed silent, and going through a broken heart all by yourself is the worst in the world. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, and I'm sure it's happened to others. And I see you, I hear you, been there. I started, throwing myself back into into my work, into the culture, doing exciting things because there was a lot to see and do there. And that part of it was great. It was probably life saving for me, actually. But after that experience, I stayed quiet for a while. And then I got another contract, another teaching contract. So then I was going into my second year. And it was during this time I started thinking to myself, the thing about this guy that I met was he had this air of real confidence about him, and a real self-assured assertiveness. Like, I'm gay and I don't care what you think.
Mhm.
Like, he's not necessarily, he was in the military, so he wasn't out at work. But if they had gone to him and asked him, like, are you gay? He would have been like, yeah, so. But I mean, it never came up with him. So, but he talked about his experience with his family and how he was just very stern about this is how I am and it's not going away. And it really inspired me to think differently about my own family. And so after I sort of got over those feelings for him, I started thinking about my family and thinking about it'd sure be nice to have if they accepted me and I could talk to them about some aspect of love, or if I got my heart broken again, I'd love to be able to talk about that. Uh, and so as I don't know if it was luck or fate, whatever, but my sister phoned me one night and we got into a discussion about uh, um, gays and lesbians. And I don't even recall how it started. I think she started it, and she said to me, I just wanted to let you know that if it ever came out up that you came out to be gay, it would be completely fine. And at the time I was just like, okay, I'm not, but in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm hanging on to that thought. And so this part's a little bit difficult to describe, but I'll try my best. So this is where I started to divorce myself from my religious upbringing. So, there's God in heaven,
Mhm.
and he's supposed to be this fatherly being, but he's also the punisher. And, he's going to for being gay, he's gonna punish me. I'm going to hell and all of that stuff. And I one night I was lying there and like, okay, so he's supposed to be this fatherly figure. So I took myself and I put myself in the position of a father. And I said to myself, as a father, would I ever want my children to feel any of the pain that I've gone through of these years, all these years, and all this denial? The answer was an unequivocal no, I would not. I would not punish my child. And that's when it clicked for me. And I divorced myself from sort of, I kind of already had, but this was more full on. And I called my sister and I said, remember that conversation we had? This was probably a couple months later. I said, remember that conversation we had? I said, yes, I'm gay. And so I came out to her and she was, of course, she was completely fine with it. Oh, that's really cool. And I decided to make a plan that I was going to write a letter to my parents. I would have liked to have told them in person, but because I was overseas, I couldn't.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to do it on the phone because I know my parents and I know I wouldn't have been able to explain in a way that they would have heard me without interrupting me. So I knew a letter, they had to read everything before responding. So I wrote the letter. And once I was sure that they got it, I composed an email and sent it to the rest of my siblings. All the siblings were fine with it. And I phoned my parents up and I reached my mother and she said, so I asked her, I said, did you get my letter? And she says, yes. And I said, okay. And what do you think? How do you feel? Well, we're not happy. And I didn't even give her a chance to expand on that. I just said, okay, I explained what this has done to me since how this made me feel, what this had done to me emotionally, how it impacted my mental health. And she softened a bit and then she went religious on me and she said, well, we'll just pray for you and you'll just go back. And I laugh now, but I was just like, yeah, Mom, I'm sorry, but that's not going to happen because believe me, I've tried that and others like me have tried that. It doesn't work. It's this
Mhm.
way. There's no changing it. And she didn't really say much. And I thought at this point, I'm going to give them a little bit of grace because, they were brought up and raised in an environment that I was too. So I thought, let them sit with it for a bit. And I knew they'd be talking to my siblings as well. And after a while, yeah, it was fine. Like they didn't say anything negative towards it. But at this time, so I was thrilled. I was thrilled that I was able to tell my family and I felt great. But at this time, new teachers were coming on board at the school I was working at because I was teaching English to kids. And there's another factor too. I forgot to mention this about living in another country is, a lot of folks in South Korea have told me that homosexuality doesn't exist in South Korea. So at that point, I was afraid if I would tell anybody at work or if they'd suspect that I might lose my job.
Mhm.
And so I stayed hidden in that regard. And then this new group of teachers came on board and all of us clicked so well. I was sort of the self designate of showing them around, taking them to see some of the sites. We just had some great experiences that it was so great that I sort of put being gay on hold. I don't know if that makes sense, but I have to admit though, I was afraid of coming out to these folks because we were clicking so well and I was having such a great time. What happened was I finished my contract and I went traveling for a little bit, 4 months backpacking. And one of the teachers who was in this friend group, he finished his contract when I finished traveling and he wanted to do some backpacking. And so we decided to backpack together. And we were both also interested in teaching English in China, trying a new country. And we thought, well, since we're both interested, why not try it together? And we can get jobs together. We did land jobs in China, a city called Shenzhen, which is in the economic free zone. Everything was great until we started living together and I developed feelings for him. And I knew he was straight. There was no question. I mean, there's always a 10% hope that he's not. I knew he was. But the other thing was he was Christian. And again, I thought that he would think really bad things about me if he knew I was gay, and B, if he knew I had feelings for him, I thought he would be just disgusted with me. And so I hid that part as much as I could, and I didn't want to. I went in the closet, but it was affecting me, and he could tell. Like by this point, and I felt so guilty about it. Like I was embarrassed and I was for having these feelings for somebody who was straight. And
Well, I think it happens to more than one of us. Yeah. I think we all
oh
kind of,
yeah,
it happens at
it's
least once.
common, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that is very relatable. You're right. So after he realized that something was going on, I ended up coming out to him, but I didn't reveal that I had feelings for him. I thought that would be enough to show that, and he was supportive in the sense that he said, well, judge the sin, not the sinner, and all that. And I was like, I'm not acting on it. And he's like, well, yeah, you don't have to act on it. And he congratulated me on being open about it and things like that. But I still didn't feel right. Like it felt like, yeah, but you wouldn't really want me to be myself as a gay man. You're supporting my staying in the closet. And so about a month later, it really took a toll on me because now I was starting to get angry at myself for keeping all this stuff inside. And I ended up having a major breakdown. He found out that I had feelings for him, and actually, it wouldn't have been a big deal to him because I would have done what anybody else would have done, distanced myself, met
Hmm.
other people, that type of thing. Hindsight's always 2020, right? And
Yeah, for
so
sure.
after that, I went back to Canada and I stayed with family and I went and got some therapy. And this was when I decided that that's it. I'm not gonna go this route anymore. I can't do this. I can't live this way. It's that's not who I am. And yeah, that's when that year, in fact, I met my partner. And we didn't start dating though right away. We just sort of kept bumping into each other. A year later, after we met, is when we started dating. He's now my husband. And then I came out fully to extended family, like cousins and basically all the people who mattered in 2010. And then after that, it was just basically, anytime I met somebody new or so I'm out to all the people who matter now. I'm not hiding from my sexuality anymore. And that is basically my story. Like so many others who can relate to this, the shame and the internalized homophobia, that really played a role in keeping me in the closet and in my mental health too. So it's been quite a journey.
For sure. I mean, I believe very confidently that there are many listeners who have either had part of the same story, similar. I think a lot of, and I don't know why this is. I don't know why we have so many people in the community that grew up in religious type households.
Mm,
It's very interesting because there are a lot of them.
hmm.
I decided to make it even more fun and go to a religious university. So I made that even more challenging on myself. But
Wow.
so I have to follow back. So when your sister brought it? Oh, well, actually, no. Let me go back a little bit farther. Were you out at university, or did you just because you said you
No.
went to university? You not at all. You were not.
Nope, not at all. I
Okay.
I was just enjoying this idea that I didn't have to perform. That was
Okay.
enough. At that time, that was enough for me. It was like a relief. It was like I got a break for a while.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And when your sister first reached out, I don't know if you've had a conversation with her after that. I mean, obviously you had the conversation with her telling her that you were gay, but did
Mhm.
she say what she said because she thought you were? And that's why she brought it up? Or did something spark her like her starting with that conversation that if you happen to be gay, it was fine? Because it's kind of a weird thing to bring up if something hasn't come up. Yeah, unless she saw something on television or something. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to bring up in case you are.
She did suspect.
Okay.
She didn't tell me at the time, that first phone call that she did. She just sort of, we started talking about, gay people, lesbians, sexual orientation. But later on, I found out that, she suspected, she knew, as did, and I think a lot of people are in this situation too. A lot of folks know before you
Oh yeah, my best friend, she
know.
was so sweet. She was like, "Why already?" When I told her, I remember when I came out to her, she goes, "Oh, I already knew. I just wanted you to be comfortable enough to when you were comfortable with yourself to share it with me. And my sister
Yeah.
said the same thing. She's like, I had an idea, but I just wasn't fully sure. But yeah, I just had it, whenever you were comfortable to say it. And because of the religious aspect, I got a lot of grief from my parents, of course.
Hmm.
Partially because for me, I'd gone to a Christian university and I had worked at a Christian sports camp at that. So, and I was really close with the family that owned the camp. And my mom was like, "Oh, I wonder what the owner of the camp would think if he knew that you were gay." And of course,
Mm.
now knowing even more about the Bible and what it says and doesn't say, by the way,
Hmm.
listeners, it doesn't say anything about homosexuality. Nothing.
No, no.
And it's very frustrating with the people, especially here in the United States, and I'm sure probably in Canada as well, where you are, that people falsely say things that are in the Bible that really aren't, or they read specific verses and they don't really. What I've loved listening to people that are, I have a friend that I follow, I'm dying to get him on my podcast actually, but he actually went to seminary. He knows very well. He's an openly gay man. He's actually been featured on numerous like news organizations talking about sexuality and the Bible. And he's like, if people really would just really read the whole thing, you would actually understand that it really doesn't say anything about it. And you have to also take it to the time period when the Bible was written and what was happening in these societies. Like when this is why certain things were written the way they were written, is they were kind of attacking the communities at that time period. They weren't. It's You can try to relate it to modern day, but not necessarily, because you have to look at what was brought going on at the time. But anyway, I digress. I
100%.
I think that's you really put yourself through a challenge because you went to two foreign countries that, especially, I can't even imagine South Korea and then China, where definitely, yeah, sexuality and like, especially being gay would definitely not probably been a good thing to come out.
No,
At least probably
not
not.
in a workplace.
Yeah, definitely
Nope.
not. Yeah. So we're going to completely change gears.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's talk a little bit about because as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, you are a coach, obviously. So you use the phrase "you don't have to break before you begin." What does that mean to you, and why is it such a core part of your coaching?
Okay. The idea has been with me for a long time, but the phrase just came out. I just came up with the phrase recently because here's the other thing about coming out is that when we recognize that we're gay, there is a lot more to us than just being gay. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
and I'll revert to something that when I came back to Canada and went to therapy, the psychologist said to me, "So, what about the other parts of you? Like, what about, you're so hyper focused on the gay aspect of yourself." And like it registered, but I kind of made light of it and I didn't really take it seriously. And it didn't really hit me until years later about, wow, there are other parts of me that I don't know, and I have to figure that out. And so, uh, after we've hidden and shrinken ourselves for so long and masked ourselves, I think that there's this overwhelming feeling that when we come out, everything is going to be like just okay, and everything's going to be our whole selves are just going to come out and it's going to be magic and it's going to be just wonderful. But for me, with that came baggage with coming out. And by that, I mean people pleasing behaviors, saying no to myself all the time, not having proper boundaries, and crippling self doubt. And all that came from, there were still remnants of shame inside me, and it kept me in that place. What happened was in March of 2017, that's when all this came to a head for me because I wasn't being my authentic self. I was being my gay self, but all the other parts of me disappeared somewhere and I forgot to consider the other pieces of me. And I'm going to preface this with this is a trigger warning. It was so bad that I attempted suicide and I spent a week in the hospital. But during this week, it was like something whispered to me, there's only one way forward. You don't want to be in this place again. There's only one way forward. And that's just being completely unapologetically you. It's the only way. And that's when things shifted for me. And I realized that if I had just begun somewhere, whether it was finding out what was important to me or finding out what I was passionate about or what really made me tick, if I had spent any time investing in that, I don't think I would have gotten to that point. And so now that's how I like to begin with people when I coach is it's not you don't if you're stepping into yourself, you don't have to do it all in one day. You don't
Mhm.
have to, you know, take on Goliath in one day. My question is, where do you want to begin? You're the captain of this ship. I'm just here for the ride. And where do you want to begin? We'll take that step together and we'll build. And you don't have to get to the breaking point.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's actually really
Yeah.
it's a great way to start your coaching time with a client because if they're not in the right spot where they need to be, it's going to make it a lot harder for you to coach them wherever in theory and hopefully where they want to be because as like if you like you have to be open, you have to be honest, you have to be coachable, obviously.
Mhm.
But if you can't be willing to share at times, I mean, obviously, no, we're not therapists, but you do have to
Right.
share a certain amount to
Yeah.
like be coached. You have to open up. And I
Yeah.
mean, that goes for me when I've been coached, I had to open up and say, okay, this is where I'm struggling. This is where I need help. And I think that
100%.
obviously, I hired you so you can help me there. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. Very important. Very, very important.
Yeah. And typically, I mean, not every it's not going to be exactly the same for everybody, but typically that takes someone on a journey that's kind of rooted in self-discovery because now you're talking about what's important to you. What is it that you're trying to get at and what is it that you what are the things that you love? What are the things that are important to you? Because when you know those things, then you can express them, you can speak up about them.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about masking,
Mm.
especially the unconscious kind. How did you first realize you were doing it and what changed when you stopped?
So for masking,
Because we all seem to do it
it's
very well.
huge. Well, I think I always knew I always knew it on some level that I've been doing it, but it was so unconscious. When someone else has another stake in it, and by that I mean my husband, that's when I realized I was doing it like totally unconsciously without even thinking about him. So as an example, um, I would make plans with friends or family, and I wouldn't ask for his input. I would because I was pleasing them or a really big thing, which I think a lot of people know, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Mhm.
So you say yes to a lot of things. And I was doing that a lot. And it was a big thing for him. And I had to sit back and think, look what I'm doing. I'm not even doing things as us like a couple should be doing. I'm taking this on and I'm not doing it for us. I'm doing it to please somebody else or because I don't want to disappoint somebody or because I don't want to miss out on something.
Mm.
But there's my husband. And then I started to be a little bit no, a lot more actually conscious about my people pleasing behaviors. And so it was, in my case, it was my husband that got me to a conscious level of masking. And then I realized I was doing it in other ways, like at work or, um, you know, just not wanting to get in trouble at work. So I just take the easy way all the time, not challenging people because I wanted to take the easy way all the time, or I wanted to please my coworkers or my superiors. It was there, but that's my behavior started to change at work in all those other aspects as well.
All right. So once you're aware of it, what were some of those first small ways that you started to unmask in everyday life?
So the first thing
Oh,
I noticed was how I felt. I felt confident. I started telling people, like, when I was making plans. Now it would be like, you know what, I have to check with my husband first, and then we'll see. I'll let you know. So that was the start of it. And then at work, places like at work, I found myself starting to speak more because I was more aware of what I was doing. So I started sharing ideas more. I started volunteering for things that were maybe a little bit more challenging, and I never would have done that previously. Work became very important to me because suddenly I was I was putting myself out of my comfort zone. I was making myself vulnerable, but in a way that I knew I would grow. I started going to the CEO of our organization with ideas. And before that, no way. That would never happen. Like why would they want to listen to me? That was my thinking before. And doing that, actually, in one case, it led to the development of a wellness task force in our organization that I co-chaired with another coworker, which was one of my biggest achievements. And just from there, it just everything changed. And even with my husband, we were more in tune as a couple. We made time together more important, celebrating, not celebrating, but enjoying those small moments together. Um, and it was, for me, I have to say, it was the best time of my life because I was finally acting in ways that aligned with who I wanted to be, who I really was. I'm speechless because it was magical. What else can I say?
that's great. So, and it's great that you recognized it, that you really needed to, unmask because we're very well known, especially in our community, especially for masking ourselves. And
Hmm.
I think that once we realize when we can unmask ourselves, how much better we're going to be and how much we're going to be to not just ourselves, but to everyone around us, be it especially our partners, but, coworkers, whoever it might be, just because it's almost like a huge sigh of relief. It's like, okay, I can just now, not say what I want to say, but and you don't have to worry about the constant people pleasing because you realize that, wow, I was doing that just so I could have this possible connection here or make sure people are liking me or whatever it might be. And now you can go, okay, well, in a way, you've already built that. So now it's like, okay, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of it kind of goes back even just to coming out because I feel that when I was even first coming out, when I first even hit the bars, I was so worried about what I was dressing like, who I was surrounding myself with. I have to
Yeah,
be with the right gaze. And then I realized that I'm me and this is who I am. Now, the whole workplace, that's a whole different, that's a whole episode on its own
oh my
because
God,
it's
yes.
been so different in every work environment I've ever worked in, just because of you have to just know, like, you can't always, excuse me, you can't always be as comfortable and confident just depending on where you are. So,
You're 100% right on that. It's a process and it's a journey. That's all I could say.
yes, for sure. So, the silent gap is such a powerful term. Can you explain what it is and why queer men in blue collar spaces are often left without a voice?
Yeah. So, and the silent gap is something I coined that term. So I didn't take this from anywhere so I'm not naming anything, but it's because folks, men, are silently suffering in this space. So think of, and there's two sort of, I hate grouping and labels, but just for purposes of explaining this, that's what I'm going to do. So think of an older queer male who is masculine presenting completely in a hyper masculine environment. Let's say the trades, for example. And no one suspects him of being gay. He doesn't get the harassment or the microaggressions. They leave him alone. He's fine. But he will hear derogatory comments that are spoken. Or any kind of other discrimination, but he won't say anything because fear of being outed or it's not safe. somehow he thinks he's going to out himself if he says anything. And it's not psychologically safe. It impacts your mental health. And some of these men might be outside of this workplace, and some of them might not be. Some of them might be so afraid that somehow it'll get back to the workplace, depending, maybe if you live in a rural community where everybody knows everybody's business, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so they hear it all, but they don't say anything, and nobody suspects it. And then there are the folks who are closeted, but they don't present 100% masculine according to those norms. And that was me. And these are the folks that experience the microaggressions, the derogatory comments. They hear it on the daily, and it might intensify the shame they already feel, or that internalized homophobia, and they suffer too. They don't know where to turn. They might be outside of work again, but they might not be. In my case, I wasn't outside of work. It's hard. Like it can put men in a really dark place. And the other side of that is some of these men really enjoy like those hands-on working type environments. And I'm going to say, when I worked at the golf course, I loved being outside. I loved the work that I did there. And in fact, I probably would have considered doing that kind of work, but I was like, it not safe here. No, not doing that. So, and I think that's the case for our youth today who, if they might express interest in, say, the trades, but they hear that it's not safe and they won't go into it because of that. And if you do go into it, you're not going to be at your best because you're not in a psychologically safe place.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so true. Excuse me. Because I think, like I just said a little bit ago, like if you can't be yourself and you can't feel comfortable in your space, especially at work, you're going to struggle.
Mhm.
You're not going to reach your full potential. Now, I'm a little offended that they said when you were working like on the flower beds and stuff that, oh, that must be a woman, like a woman job, because my grandfather was a florist and my father and my aunt and my other uncle
Mhm.
worked at that florist shop while they were growing up. I mean, granted, it was part of the family business, but it's kind of insulting because some of the like most amazing florists or people that deal with gardening are not women, they're men.
Exactly.
Anyways, just had to
And not
throw
gay
that in there.
either. They're
And not
straight.
gay either, yeah. So
Yes.
it's like, how rude coming from a
Right?
throwback to what was that, a 90s show? Yeah, Full House. How rude when they would say that on
Stephanie.
Stephanie, yes. Wow, I feel old now. Okay, let's move on.
I agree.
So, where was I? I lost myself. Here we go. So, coming out later in life can bring joy, but it also can bring grief for the years that we didn't get to live fully as ourselves. How have you processed that personally?
So, of course, you don't realize it at the time, but after I really started coming to terms with myself, I realized that, I repressed a big part of myself. And in that respect, it took longer for me to mature and develop. Because when you think about it, our teenage years, those are the years we get into romance and we find out about relationships and how they work and that sort of thing. And I and other men who come out later miss out on all of that. Like I would love to know what it would have been like to go to a movie with a guy that you like. Just go to a movie with a guy that you like, or to talk about, to talk about with your friends about a guy that you like. Those kinds of
Mhm,
things. I missed out on all of those kinds of things, and I think I really do believe that that plays a role in, for lack of a better word, stunting our growth as humans. And I think it held me back in my career too, because being the people pleaser that I was, the first career I chose, I did it because I saw that it pleased my family. And that first career was accounting. And
mhm.
I think about it now, and it's like, what was I even thinking? No offense to anyone who's an accountant, because
Hey, good
for
for them. We need them, so it's all good.
we absolutely need them. But for me, it was very dry. I didn't want to be stuck behind four walls. And so, but I went to school, and because I saw when I when I was looking and reading about it, when I was considering what I wanted to do, I saw the look on everybody's faces and how they lit up, and I went for it. But if I had been more in tune with myself, maybe if I had been developed a little bit better outside of my family, I feel like I would have gone a different route. So, but there are blessings too coming out later in life. And with that, I realize in my working life or my vocation or whatever, money and titles mean nothing to me. If I'm doing something, it has to be because I have a purpose or there's it's meaningful to me. Of
Hmm.
course, we all have to make a living. I'm not saying I'm
Yeah.
gonna not ever make money, but I'm not gonna sacrifice my values for more pay or some big title. And that's the part I love about my authenticity is I won't sacrifice those things.
Oh, that's good. And I think, yeah, I think once I especially, so, I mean, obviously I came out at 25,
Hmm.
and part of my reason, a little bit kind of similar to yours though, is because it was, I was done with college. I had done and I didn't have for me, I didn't have a horrible religious experience. I mean, not I wouldn't say horrible. I was in a very conservative household. I had gone to, just that growing up. But for me, I still felt like in a way I was still masking a little bit of who I really was able to
Mm,
be. And until I really came out and, came out to friends, family, then I thought, okay. But even now, looking back now to that time, I'm not the same gay male today that I was back then. I don't, I might like some of the similar things, but I definitely wouldn't be hanging out with that same crowd. I wouldn't be hanging, I don't. I have a very completely different type of friends. Probably would have never found my partner had I not kind of changed how I am now, now, which is interesting to look back at it. We've been together, 11 years, and we definitely, no way would we have met, 20 plus years ago. I don't think we wouldn't have mixed in the same crowds. So I'm glad in some ways of the growing up, but kudos to the younger generations that could come out earlier
oh my gosh,
because,
yes.
but I'm glad for their confidence. I'm happy that they have that confidence.
Me too.
But I think in a way, when you get to come out a little bit later, you get to kind of experience some stuff in your own life first. But you also can take a little, as much as I think we see this more as we get a little bit older and when you're like our age, you get to observe, kind of take a big picture look of everything where you don't really do that, when we're younger. It's like, oh, it's this way or this way. And we don't really kind of like when we're growing up, it's with our parents, it's their way or their way. There is no other option. We are going to be
Yeah.
doing it how they say to do it. Um,
Yeah.
the funny thing is, my dad was a medical doctor. I did not go down that path. I didn't want to go down that path. Thankfully, I did not. For me, truthfully, I knew I wanted to do something creatively. And it's kind of funny that it took me way too many years to get into, coaching. 5 years ago, I got into coaching, but I didn't. And even I got 5 years ago is when I got into podcasting. It's interesting that, this is my third podcast, but it took some growing, so took some educating, learning, about what did I really want to do. And I find it a little funny that now I'm like, okay, well, I'm in, my 50s and I finally decided what I wanted to do. Well, I mean, technically, but I was in my 40s when I knew that I wanted to do coaching. I just wasn't in the right mindset, in the right space to do coaching yet. So,
But would you say that, do you regret that or would you say that you're wiser now and you have that wisdom to know sort
well, I'm definitely wiser from the
of?
experience. Yeah, oh, much so. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much more wiser than I think I needed the time to learn and to really even just learn more about myself. Kind of like what you said when you were talking about with your therapist, like you're more than just a gay man. Like, I've done photography. I was a competitive athlete. I was a swimmer. I sing. I'm in a choir. Like there's so much more to me than just a gay male that happens to, for me, it's kind of like that who, obviously we're both coaches. So who happens to be a coach and also hosts a podcast. So
Yeah.
yes, I'm proud of my, me being a gay male. Like I am. And I'm not going to ever hide that.
No.
At least I sure hope I don't have to. Who knows with the
Yes.
state of everything happening in our country right now.
I
So
hope you don't. I hope you don't.
I know a lot of people
Yes.
who want to leave this country because of things happening very fast. But that being said, I think that, and I know that I've had numerous conversations about men, especially men in our community, because I feel like it's almost harder for a gay male to come out. I don't know what it is and I could be wrong and I just could be naive, but I feel it's almost easier if you're a lesbian or, yeah, I feel like it's easier if you're a lesbian compared to like a gay male because I don't know, even looking back many decades ago, it seemed to always be like, oh, that's just a lesbian couple over there. It wasn't a big deal. But if you had a
Mhm.
gay couple, it's like, oh, that's a gay couple. They're just, you'll stay away from them. And it never made sense to me. And now being older, I was like, there are so many naive people. Like, there's nothing wrong with us at
No.
all. I mean, we're all
No.
unique and different in our own ways. But
Absolutely.
I think that's when we get to be our authentic self, and I know and this is going to be a nice little segue into what I'm about to ask you. Being authentic is, I think, a huge thing. And I think that sometimes we have to be authentic in a unique way, sometimes, depending on the work environment we might be in, but, because of those situations. And I've said this recently on a few episodes that I've recorded with other LGBTQ plus professionals. It's like sometimes we just have to know how to put like to read the room, to really know how much we can be open
Mhm.
and how much do we really want to share. Because at the end of the day, I don't really need to know that much personal information about all of my coworkers. And why do they
Right.
need to know all that about me?
Right.
But sometimes you have the nosy coworkers that want to know everything and anything about you. And that's why at times you then have to either go silent on social media or just purposely block certain people, which I know some that do that, so they
Mhm.
don't see everything that we're doing in our personal lives. Because at the end of the day,
That's
it's
right.
not their business. We can share
No.
the amount of people that put on social media a fake front of how they are and how their life is unbelievable.
Oh
But
my gosh, yes.
so, talking about authenticity. So, you've turned your personal journey into a group program called Authentically You. What's the transformation that you hope people walk away with after joining it?
3 things: self-love, self-acceptance, and self-empowerment. And by this, I don't mean that you have to be magically all the way there at the end of the program, but now you have what you need to continue your journey of living authentically, and it's sustainable for you long term. And because it's a group program, you'll have a built-in support network with other men that you meet in the group.
I love that. That is
Yeah.
awesome. I have yet to do any group coaching. I've contemplated it because you have that, like just what you said, you have that support. And I think that's
Mhm.
actually a great way. That's why a lot of coaches do group coaching, is because you have that other support and you have people that maybe, even though they should speak up in a one-on-one session, but they might speak up in a group session because if they're seeing other people saying they share this information, they might actually go, oh, wait, I had that same experience. I did this is why this is what I might need to change. So I love
Yeah.
that. That's great. All
Thanks.
right. So we're going to go completely opposite. Excuse me. I'm going to say completely opposite, but you got to prepare for what I just asked you. This is now what you don't get to prepare for. So these are fun. I do this with every person that I bring on. I like to have fun, like rapid fire questions. So I want you to answer to the best of your ability the first thing that pretty much comes to mind. I don't
Okay.
want you to have to sit there and think about it because that's not fun. They're called rapid fire for a reason. They're supposed to be answered quickly. So you can instantly master any blue collar trade. Which one are you choosing and
Landscaping, because you get to make things look beautiful. And I love that.
I love it. I just can't stand well, that's not true. When I was younger, so I loved to mow. Now, let me put a little asterisk on that. I
Hmm.
loved to mow because the yard that we had was so big growing up that we had a riding lawnmower. Now, the only thing I did not like was having to empty that grass after while the clippings were in the bags. Then I had to transfer those to trash bags. But I loved the mowing. It was freeing. And I loved seeing the result. I was like the same thing. It was beautiful. Like to see a freshly
Yeah,
cut lawn and see it all like like bushes trimmed, everything, manicured. It was just, I loved it. And I
yeah,
love the smell of fresh cut grass when I've ever been dry.
me too.
There's just something about it that is just like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I just love that smell.
There should be a candle that is a scented candle that is fresh cut grass.
Yes, for anyone out there listening, you should create this. I'm not smart enough to create something like that.
Me either.
I sing, I don't create something like that. And I chat. So, okay, this is going to be a little different. So, if you could
Okay.
have one completely impractical superpower just for fun, what would it be?
I'm not thinking, I'm laughing because I've had this question before and I always say invisibility.
I mean, I get
Y-
it. I think it would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'd love to go and be in a room and with people and move things around and
I mean,
it's the
yeah, it's such a, yeah, it would be so fun. I'm right there with you. I would love that. That would be so cool. So, all right,
cool.
one last thing, and then we'll wrap it up. So, what
Sure.
is one thing from your teenage years that you'd bring back exactly as it was? No updates or improvements.
Basically, what would I keep the same?
Yeah, what you would keep the same. If you had like, I don't know if I just, I guess maybe an example of like maybe I'm gonna say we'd say a toy because we didn't really play with that many toys. Well, that's not totally true, but I played a lot of Star Wars until a certain point, but with all the Star Wars stuff, but and Legos. But yeah, I mean,
Gosh, there's actually a few things, but if I have to pick one, I'm going to say Nintendo.
I would agree. If I could go back to actually the original Nintendo when it first came out,
Yes. Yeah.
I loved it. I loved it, but we were funny. We were funny kids. We loved being outdoors so much that when my parents got it, my sister and I were like, oh, this is great. We'll play this. We'll play, we'll have fun. We would last for maybe an hour or two, and then we were back outside, especially in the summertime. And even in the winter, then we'd be back outside playing in the snow.
Oh yeah.
We just like being outdoors. I
Mm.
feel that that is something a lot of younger kids now, and maybe not necessarily younger kids, there are some adults that do it as well, that are glued to a TV or whatever, to a device to playing, games. And I think
Yeah.
I enjoyed my younger years more because I wasn't, that I got to enjoy the outdoors, smelling the fresh cut grass, like being outside right after a snow, then hearing that silence. Like there's just something about, I don't know. I love seeing, like, I don't know. Now, granted, I do live in Colorado now and I do love nature and I love the outdoors, but
Oh yeah.
it's just, yeah, I think we enjoyed it more. I think I enjoyed it more just being outside. And
Actually,
we didn't have phones. We didn't have any way to communicate with people except by either calling them or physically going over to their place to knock on their door to hang out, which
that's
was
right.
wonderful. It was a
Yeah.
great way to communicate. And I
Yep.
loved I love now if we go anywhere and we get to like disconnect because we get to
Oh yeah.
really
In nature,
enjoy
especially.
each other and not all the devices and the screens and everything around us. It's like just enjoy
Yeah.
it. So,
Actually, can I take mine back?
sure.
I thought
What
of
do
a
you?
better one. Building
Okay. Oh
forts
my gosh, I love building forts. Oh my
out in the
gosh.
bushes. That's my favorite thing. Yeah.
I love that. All right.
Yeah.
So, as we wrap up, what key piece of advice or actionable tip could you leave our listeners today from what we've been talking about?
You know what? For anyone, no, you could be in or out of the closet. It doesn't matter. But if you're in a work situation, I'm going to give you a little, I call these affirmation scripts, and I've used these myself. And I'm going to use one of my favorites when I'm at work. And because I just want people to know that, especially if you're in the closet, being in the closet does not mean that you don't have any power. You do. You have more than you realize. But one of my favorite things to say to people at work, if you're in that space where it's like it's none of your business type thing, I'm here to work, not explain myself. That's it. And if you have trouble speaking up, practice those small scripts, the easy ones, and you'll get better at it. And practice them with people that you trust. It will get easier. I promise.
This is very true. Yes, I would agree with you. Well, I want to thank you, Scott, for bringing your honesty, your advocacy, and your passion to this conversation. You've reminded us that authenticity isn't just about being loud, it's about being real. And that starts with giving ourselves permission to stop editing who we are. Whether you're out in the closet or somewhere in between, your voice matters, and you don't have to break before you begin. Look how I added that in.
Brilliant.
And so, listeners, if Scott's story resonated with you, connect with him. It's scottkratchmer.com or on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn at Scott Kratchmer Coaching. And that is Kratchmer. And this will also be in the show notes. And if you're a queer man looking for a safe, empowering space to explore who you are, check out his 12-week Authentically You program launching in late September. Your authenticity is not up for negotiation, and the time to start is now. So until next time, stay empowered, stay out, and keep building the life and career that reflects all of who you are.